Good morning. Our new King Charles was one of the early and persistent visionaries and champions of a sustainable environment. Now, as he begins his reign as king in our democratic monarchy, his thoughts will be shared behind closed doors with the leaders of the Commonwealth when they seek his advice. So it seems to me, as a salute to his new role, we owe it to King Charles to take a second, sober look at what he has advocated and what we've been doing. Effective changes within society only happen when individuals buy into the concerns and solutions. Media and politicians can make grand pronouncements and can commit nations to spending vast sums of our own money, but they cannot turn hearts without inviting us in and convincing us that their ideas will work and that we matter. There are so many aspects to the problem, and I am certainly not suggesting that I have all the answers. What I do know is that I am conflicted and that I'm confused. I hear that countries are turning to burning more coal when they cannot get enough gas or oil. Yet our country, rich in both oil and gas, refuses to build gas lines to prevent that. And we choose to leave Europe dependent on Russia to heat their homes in a time of war. Rising prices that are forcing families to choose between food and heat are the result of the rising prices for these fuels that this scarcity has produced. And then I ask myself, what is the Christian role in all of this? I read that nuclear power is one of the cleanest sources of fuel in the world, and yet we're closing such plants in favor of the currently unreliable sun and wind. And we're not offering up our technologies and resources to provide life-saving power to others who don't share our vision of a world powered by wind and sun. And then I hear that the batteries to power all the electric cars and so much more require rare earth elements, and that over 90% of their production is from China. And further, the disposal of these batteries will be an environmental challenge as well. So how do we choose to whom we will be dependent for our future? And the more I read, the more I worry that we're rushing into things without considering all the consequences. Just as Germany, shutting down their nuclear power plants, created their reliance on Russian natural gas, and a very cold winter without that power now stares Europeans in the face. It isn't that I'm not convinced of the need for us to act. It's that I don't hear any discussion of the alternatives and the dependencies being created or being invited to participate. And most of all, I'm always suspicious when the government thinks it knows best and doesn't choose to involve the public and just says, "Trust us." We're teaching our children about the environment and the threat of our actions on our future, but it has always seemed to me that the best way to impress a concept on others is by their experiencing the teachings. For instance, if the school board mandated that all classrooms would be heated to no more than 18 degrees Celsius or 65 degrees Fahrenheit to save the burning of unnecessary energy, children encouraged to bring heavy sweaters or blankets to school would experience the connection between their lessons on the environment and how they can be part of a practical solution. It would be a lesson that they would remember about consequences. Now, I sometimes wonder at the futility of sorting my garbage. My kitchen with 3 garbage bags and a box for pop cans, and my office with 2 more boxes. I look at each item to dispose and try to reason out what goes into what container. I try to do my bit, even when the newspapers report that only 70% of Toronto's sorted garbage avoids the landfills. But 70% as opposed to none is a big step in the right direction. Maybe the private sector could come up with better ways of disposing of the rejected waste, because contamination, a result of those confusing directions and symbols, accounts for most of the rejects. Did you know that when you get a pizza, the little plastic lift goes into the gray box? The bottom of the box goes into the green box, and you should cut off the top and put it in the blue box. Something I learned preparing these thoughts. When they started talking about plastic waste and turned our attention to one-use shopping bags, it seemed a simple thing, but wondered how much difference could it really make. But it made sense, so when Sobeys brought in these really neat reusable bags that folded easily and fit into my purse, it was easy to make the change. The 5-cent tax per one used bag didn't hurt either. Loblaws reports their changes resulted in 13.8 billion fewer bags available to hit the landfill, even though they are all recyclable if only people would put them in the blue bin. Although I do wonder what will replace the really useful second uses the plastic bags have always provided for wet and smelly waste. Think pads for leaky bladders, dog poo, and poopy diapers. Will we have to use the big garbage bags in the future? Or just adjust our noses to ignore the issue? I suppose we will find out in time. But we see people really trying when it's explained to them. 3 years ago, the big advice for individuals, if they wanted to contribute to saving the planet, was reusable cups and bottles for coffee and water. Now you see people bringing their own cups to the coffee urn at the office and water bottle in hand jogging down the street. They hold them like badges of honor. Car use is back up to pre-COVID rates, bike riding far above, but not public transportation. I'm sure winter weather will raise those numbers, but making people feel safe on subways and streetcars would help to get people to return. Streetcars are now 4 cars long, with the driver at the front and the only employee aboard. So I get uneasy when I'm alone in the evening in the third car and 4 or 5 young men, clearly in high spirits, climb aboard. Nor am I comfortable when someone is urinating against the subway station's tiled walls as I await the next train. I don't know the solutions, but the old single streetcar with the driver within hearing distance felt safer to me, and the buses still do. I take the train whenever I can to avoid driving, trusting that it makes a significant environmental difference. I am prepared to pay what amounts to double the price. I recently heard of a new initiative that would have all the costs of a product built into the market price. For instance, included in the cost would be the costs of fuel emissions of transporting and disposing of the packaging and the product, much like the extra $25 paid when you buy a computer to cover the costs that will accrue when its lifetime is over. Making people aware of the extraction, shipping, and disposal costs would let consumers make educated decisions and pay for their own, not the excesses of others, hopefully resulting in people buying locally, the solution for so much. So, King Charles, I think we're trying. I wish we knew more so that we could do a better buy-in. I trust the private sector to come up with better solutions to the environmental problems than the government's commitment to taxing us into obedience. But then, I generally think that individuals make better spending decisions and hold suppliers more accountable than does the government, and that the private sector provides better, faster, more practical, and less expensive answers when presented with a problem and a deadline. But that's just my perspective. One that is reinforced every time I hear of an MP spending $16 on a glass of orange juice, a one-day limo ride in Toronto for $1,700, or the Prime Minister's 14-minute flight from Charlottetown to Summerside, Prince Edward Island, that would use about 710 pounds of fuel and release 1 ton of CO2 emissions. All in all, I have a lot of faith in the sense and willingness to act responsibly of most Canadians. I think most Canadians want to do their part, but don't know what to do because they haven't been brought into the discussion or involved in the solutions. I just wish the various governments trusted us as much as they expect us to trust their pronouncements and solutions. We all need to look after the world that God entrusted to us, and that means making good and right choices and decisions. To do that, we need the facts and the figures and to have open discussions with all of us involved, because then we will all get behind it, and that will make the real difference. So may it be. Amen. Remember the children's hymn, All Things Bright and Beautiful? Sing it one more time. to remind you what an incredible world we were gifted with. And let's get our act in gear to make sure that it continues.